Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to week 9 of this 12-week emotional intelligence bootcamp. This is a really exciting week because we're talking about something that all of us face in our lives, whether you're in work or whether you're at home, and it's conflict. Now, there's a term that's managing conflict that I don't really like because it infers that we're managing the people that are part of the conflict with us. And we've learned through the teaching this week that the difficult personalities and the people that we potentially have conflict with, you can't control them, you can't predict them, and you have no way of managing their response or their behavior in the midst of conflict. The only thing you have control over is yourself. So the term effectively navigating conflict means that you're working through conflict with respect and kindness, managing your emotions so they don't get the better of you. And this week specifically, I have, again, my mom, Kathy Swanlund, and my aunt, Karen Bargelski, here because these two ladies, while life for me has been difficult, there's been a lot of conflict in my relationship with both of them. We've grown together, we've learned together, but they also have faced other conflict in their life, specifically Karen in her business world. That's why I think she's a great guest for this episode. And my mom in her personal life, who is now retired and has really great nuggets of wisdom to share with us. So, welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for joining me again.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi. So, because we're talking about conflict, I want to ask each one of you when the term conflict is raised or heard, what's your immediate reaction to that word?
Crap.
Mine is opportunity.
Okay.
Really?
It is.
Mom, explain a little bit more about that for you.
Because relationships are so important to me, that conflict provides an opportunity to hear, to understand, to take a step back and ask some really important questions, because we all need to know, if I'm in conflict with someone, what is my part of the conflict? And maybe is it possible that I've misunderstood something and I see something as a conflict, which may be very easy to navigate through because I'm the one that had the wrong impression. I'm the one that was struggling with an issue that I let seep out into the relationship that created the conflict in the very beginning. So to me, conflict in a relationship, if it's an important relationship, is an opportunity for reconciliation, for understanding, for clarity, and actually for building a better foundation, of discussion and understanding for future conversations that come up to help reduce the conflicts in the future.
I love that. I want to come back to that. So, Karen, what about you? When you think about conflict, I know we're taking a professional lens with you. Share a
Yeah.
little bit about that.
I love everything Kathy said, but
Mhm.
in the business world, for me, it's when I hear the word conflict, that's my first reaction is, oh no. And then, dialing myself back, going, okay, it's something that needs to be addressed, right? And it needs to be addressed because if I'm in conflict, I can't work 100%. I can't, around whatever that conflict is, right? If it's between another person or a customer, I can't move forward until there's resolution to that conflict. And that can take many forms and it may take different actions, but the bottom line is, conflict for me represents work stoppage. It also represents, like Kathy said, an opportunity for growth. And I look at it to as my personal growth. And what I have found is that the instances of conflict for me are very similar.
Hmm.
So there's aspects of the conflict that's similar. And so it's a way of having to look at myself and going, okay, you're a part of this. And so what am I bringing to the table that is contributing to the conflict? And then having to make some decisions based off that and the circumstances.
Yeah, I love that. So I guess my next question is going to be, I think when I speak to people about conflict, there's an immediate like, oh, I hate conflict. I'm afraid of conflict. I avoid conflict. And so I'm curious from both of your perspectives, how do you stay in a mindset where you're not afraid of conflict and you don't see conflict as um, you're pointing the finger at the other person, that it takes two, and to remain open-minded to your role within the conflict?
Well, you can't get resolution otherwise. So
Mhm. Oh, I
Oops,
think we lost her.
she froze.
She froze.
Do you want me to chime in?
Yeah, go ahead, Mom.
So I think when the thought, oh, there, Karen, are you back?
Here, you froze for a
oh, I
sec,
didn't
Karen. You
realize
want to
I
share that again?
disappeared.
It's
You froze.
okay.
Sorry about that. I guess I would say that you can't move forward. So
Hmm.
in order to move forward in the relationship, in the circumstance, it has to be addressed. And so nobody likes it. How do you get comfortable with it? I think when you can learn to recognize it for what it is, to Kathy's point, because I mean, she's obviously way more emotionally mature than I am, because she can see it as an opportunity. I think it's harder to see it as an opportunity in the business world. I don't think it's impossible, but it is. I mean, that's very true. It's very true because you're going to learn something. You might learn something about yourself. You might learn something about the situation, or you might learn something about the other person. But either way it is, you are going to learn something.
Yeah, true. Mom.
I think that for me, the negative umbrella over conflict is, did I make a mistake? Am I in conflict because I made a mistake? And then do I have to look deep within myself to try and correct that? Is there a correct conflict? To me becomes, if it was negative in my life, which it has been negative, um, but once I, and I'm not, and I'm sometimes it still is negative, but I want to approach it with an attitude of, maybe I did make a mistake. Maybe I am the reason why there's conflict here. And I need to walk back a tone or a word, or, just going off on somebody, because I lost my temper. Um,
Mm.
I think that that is the scary part of conflict in my heart, is, if I made a mistake and I'm going to have to apologize to this person I'm now in conflict with because I was the one that was in the wrong, that exacerbated the situation, that moved it into a conflict, then that becomes really negative for me personally. That has been my experience. And so
Yeah.
in my work environment, I managed an office of 65 to 70 realtors, all very hot-headed. We had conflict a lot, but I think that what I learned was, if I come into it with an understanding of, I want to understand what's going on here with you. I want to seek to listen instead of be heard. And so that I
Mhm.
already can come with an idea of diffusing some of the attack mode that people get into, and come back to an area where my body language, my facial components, which, you have to monitor those too, um, are such that they're
Something I'm not good at, by the way.
that they're welcoming to someone to come in and know that, okay, maybe she's safe to talk to, even though she blew up on me. She's relaxed. She's a safe person to talk to.
Mm, I love that. So I want to move into maybe a storytelling option here. I asked both of you prior to the call to come up with, or to share one story where it was a pretty serious conflict. What did you learn about yourself? How did you manage through that? And then what have you learned since then, and how you deal with conflict today? So Karen, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, shoot. Uh, yeah, so this has been a few years ago, had a up and coming executive in a meeting with a client, um, devalue the efforts that I was bringing to the table to support the client. Uh, in front of the client, in front of my leadership, and in front of me.
Mm.
And to say that I was upset is just an understatement. I was smoking hot. And after the meeting was over, I literally had to get up out of my chair and scream because I was so mad. I was so angry and just how could she do this to me? And this was a person that was not in my direct line of leadership, but clearly, had outside influence. And I was to the point where I was going to take him to HR. I was that angry.
Mm.
And my steps were to calm down and, to Kathy's point, try to come at it from a standpoint of assuming innocence, which I think is a really good thing to always have in the back of your mind, is to assume innocence. And sometimes it's really hard because some of the words that were used could only have been taken one way. However, to add color to the story, this person was of a different culture than I am. And I had to recognize that there were cultural differences. And I ended up going to my manager, explaining that I was very upset, I was very angry, and needed to dialogue with this person about how I was feeling, and what was said was hurtful. It was professionally damaging to me. And so we got this person on a call, and I explained how I was, how I took her words. And, of course, she certainly backpedaled and said she absolutely did not mean for that to be the message, but that she could understand how that message could have been received not only by me, but by our customer that I support on a regular basis that she hardly knew.
Mm.
And while I still had a lot of distrust with this person, I'm glad I took those steps, because fast forward 2.5 years later, she became the vice president that I reported to. And it was always incumbent upon me to seek clarification when I felt her communication was either abrasive, demeaning, or disrespectful. I would have to go back and ask questions, clarifying questions that, when you said this is how I took it. Is that how you meant it? Can we get more clarity around that?
I love that. And I mean, it's so hard when you have a manager above you, whether it's a direct line or it's a level up or a couple levels up, right? And there's a miscommunication. Words are said that are not really taken into account. You said assume innocence, assume positive intent is really difficult, especially when you've been offended or you've been hurt. And it's a business professional setting where sometimes you expressing how you feel is dangerous. So,
Right.
just in this moment, can you offer a concrete piece of advice to the listeners on this call and who's going to listen afterwards? How do you navigate the day to day when you have a manager who you don't like, who you don't connect with, who you've butted heads with? How do you maintain a positive attitude and mindset in your workday when that is the relationship that you have?
For me, it's about documentation and seeking clarity always, so
Mm.
that because I have that in my life, and it's really burdensome. It can be very, very burdensome. I have switched teams, as you know, because I've lost my manager that I got along with, and being on a whole new team and whole new different personality dynamic. And so I fall back to, I know what my job is, I know what my role is, and where I'm not clear on expectations, then I will, through written communications, get clarity around what is the expectation. And even within those expectations, I seek from my management, what is my success in meeting your expectations look like to you? Not to me, but what does it look like to you? And I have found
Love that.
that the two very different um, opinions isn't a word, but it's very different than what I thought it looked like, right? And
Perspective,
so,
maybe.
yes, and so constantly seeking out in my one-on-ones with my management, what does success look like to you? Here's what it looks like to me, and I'm finding that we're apart. We are apart, and
Mm.
so now I have to change how I work to meet those
I
expectations,
love
which
that.
isn't a bad thing. And it's
Right.
not a matter of right or wrong. It's a matter of right and left. I
Hmm.
still don't like it. It's uncomfortable. I've been working the way I work for a long time, and now I'm being asked to change. And sometimes change is difficult. It's challenging because you have to stretch
Sometimes.
yourself in ways, right? In ways that you never thought you would.
Yeah.
So I would say the biggest piece of advice is to be curious, assume innocence, but get clarity and do so in writing,
Mm.
because that helps you with dangerous managers that said, no, I told you this. And you can say, but in the email, you said this, and we agreed this is what success looks like. So help me understand, where we go from
Yeah.
here. Or
That's great
if
advice.
success changes, great. I'm gonna confirm this in writing with you again, so that I'm really, really clear. And I always put it on myself, especially when management's involved. So if you're in conflict with the manager, it's incumbent upon me as the employee to make sure I understand what their perception of success looks like. I may not agree with it, and I may not like it, but at least I know what the expectations are.
I love that. And do you find yourself that you emotionally pull back and are less engaged with that manager? Or do you find that you're continuing to make attempts to connect with that person to have a better relationship?
Um, it depends on the manager, and in this case, I don't want to be emotionally invested yet because there's no trust. And so as we navigate, 6 months from now, I may say something very different. But right now, when you have no basis of trust yet, and we're working to build that, um, then my answer, then I might become more emotionally invested. But right now, I'm emotionally invested in my clients and the people that I support, and having to kind of hold the management side at bay
Mhm.
until I know their communication style and I understand their perspective and I understand what success looks like to them, and that I can
Mhm.
achieve that. Because some of it
I
too
really
is insecurity with me. Can I be successful in that way? And I don't know.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to highlight something that I think just kind of struck me, which is emotional intelligence is one of those things where you have to know when to lean in and you have to be comfortable with the fact that you may not be leaning in, right? It's not pedal to the metal 24/7. You're not gaslighting yourself through every relationship and every circumstance for the sake of being emotionally intelligent. It's knowing when it is appropriate to lean in and open up emotionally to a business professional, because in the business world, right, those emotional relationships can sometimes make or break your career. So I really love that advice. Okay, so mom, I'm going to ask you for your story and your experience with conflict.
So, but what I want to say on that too, Janelle,
Yeah,
is I think that is true for all of life in relationships, in the workplace and out of the workplace. We are going to
true.
have people, we're going to have spherical, um, oh, what's that term? We're going to have people in our inner circle. Then we're going to have people in our outer circle.
Yep.
We're going to have, all
Yep.
right. And so we're going to interact with each of the people in those different circles differently because you are not going to invest in every single person that comes your way. And
Yeah.
to me, whether I was in the workplace or just personally, my first question is, what is my investment in this relationship? Do I want or need anything from this person? That
Sure.
right there, for me, is the first question that's going to help me have a framework about how I'm going to approach the conversation. If I want or need something from this person, it's an intimate friendship or an intimate relationship with a family member. I'm going to approach that so much differently because that person has a role in my life that affects me in a much greater way, right? So that's my first question. If I am invested in that and it's an intimate relationship, then I have a stake in this relationship becoming reconciled and being positive and and taking a step back so that I can hear what they're saying, because that emotional investment sometimes will shut off your hearing, shuts off my hearing, where
Yeah.
I just need to get my words out. I just need to say what I need to say. And in the meantime, because all three of us are assertive women that,
It's
sometimes
such a
people are
kind
really
word, Mom.
put off by that. They're just put off by that. And we tend to
Mhm.
we tend to not have a problem controlling conversation. And so, we can do that little dance around, and put people on that merry-go-round really efficiently, when really
Yeah,
what we need to do is get off the merry-go-round and ask the other
yeah,
person to get off the merry-go-round and start listening to each other. And so,
yeah.
my example would be from someone in my past that was definitely in my inner circle in family. And this person was a dynamic woman, and she would make comments that were just so hurtful. And I finally had to come to the place where I said to this person, I won't use her name, um, do you have any idea how much it hurts my feelings to hear you say that? I had to bare my soul to her in order to help her understand that in the course of the conversation, the daggers that were coming my way were just starting to blow me over. And really, I
Mm,
would say it was probably the first time in my adult life that I actually approached a person older than me who had authority with that kind of emotional openness, right?
mm,
And vulnerability. And she immediately stepped back and went, I had no, that's not what I wanted to do at all. And it
mm,
gave opportunity for us to then come together in a safe place of her knowing that I was feeling hurt. She didn't intend to hurt me. And we had an opportunity to knit together this relationship that never again resulted in that kind of a hurt feeling, no, a conflict in how the conversation was going. And she had a minor conflict with me that she was expressing in a way that was damning, was very damning. And it was pointed directly at me without giving
mhm,
opportunity for us to take a step back and get perspective. And that's what I was really asking for, is perspective. So for me, in all relationships, perspective is a vital tool of being able to create a foundation for a conflict to become resolved, or at least to have a better outcome than this constant
yeah,
sandpaper against sandpaper.
yeah. So I want you to go back to that circumstance, Mom, and I want you to think about, here's my question. What was the catalyst for you? Because leading up into the point that you decided to say something, that behavior had been a part of your relationship with her,
Right.
right?
So,
So
mhm,
what led you to that moment to say enough?
because I now was an adult. I wasn't a child, I was an adult. And I, at that moment, all of those things that flood through our heads, like, I can't believe she's saying that to me, and she absolutely hates me. And I mean, you get all this self-talk going that is just destroying the opportunity for you to stand back and actually seek clarity.
Mm,
Um, that relationship was so important to me. It was vital for me to have that relationship, that I had to stop that downward progression of just beating me over the head, and not
yeah,
realizing that in beating me over the head, she was ripping my heart out as well. And
yeah,
so it was because of the love I had for her and the desire for that relationship that I finally had to come to the place to just stop that conversation, because she was someone I loved. She was a family member, to be able to say, "Oh, we got to stop this right now." And that's hard as a young adult to do that to an older adult. But in this case, it was so healing. It put us on the same, not level of adulthood, but it I think brought me up to a level where she saw me as a person who wanted to be her friend. I didn't just want to live in this adult child type relationship. I wanted
mhm,
to I wanted to be her friend. I wanted to do things that friends do, not just, an older family member with a younger family
yeah.
member who happen to be women.
When you thought about, like, going through that type of conversation prior to that, and you thought, "Man, I need to say something. I'm tired of feeling this way." When you thought about approaching, was there fear? Was
Yeah.
there apprehension? Was there stress,
Yes.
anxiety?
Because again, our family has a history of assertive women, and we come to the table ready to share. And You don't even have to ask us for our opinion for us to give it to you. So, I mean,
I don't know what you're talking about.
so that's been the history, right? And so
Yeah.
when you have that kind of a history, and then you know that you're approaching something, and this was in the moment. I mean, this wasn't like a planned thing. This was in the moment. I had to come to the place to love this person enough to enter what could have been a conflict that would not be resolved. But
Yeah.
I loved her enough, and I knew that the relationship would never be able to progress in a positive, affirming, mature way if we didn't
Mhm.
get over this hump. And
Mm.
so again, it's taking a risk, and relationships are always risky. So
Yeah.
for me, that was the first time I took a risk. And what I learned from that invaluable lesson of most people, especially people that you love, want to be in a positive, affirming relationship with you. And so if you are able to reach out and say, I want that, but then also couch that in, but well, you need to talk through a few things, so that you then can understand, is it as important to the other person? Maybe it
Yeah.
isn't.
Yeah.
Maybe you've got a person that said, forget it. I don't like you. You're too mouthy for me. You're too headstrong for me. I don't want to be in your life. I have to be
Yeah.
okay with that then, because I'm opening the
Yeah.
door for that.
Yeah. Before we wrap this part of the session, Karen, I'm going to ask you one piece of advice, best practices, try this next time, something tangible.
For when you're in conflict,
Hmm.
I would
I'm
say
going to focus on the business professional setting with you.
sure,
So,
sure. Um, I would say the first thing to do after, allow yourself to be mad, right? When you realize that you're in conflict, it's okay to go through the emotions, go through whatever you got to go through. And then when you kind of, I don't want to say get over yourself, but when you can think rationally, start asking yourself questions. What do you know about this person that you're in conflict with? Are they your manager? Are they a peer? That's going to drive in my mind, your next steps. And assume positive intent, even though it looks, even if somebody out and outright said, you're a horrible person, you're a terrible employee or coworker, assume positive intent and start asking questions that are open-ended, and be honest about, when you said or did this, I felt that, and be okay to be vulnerable and accept feedback, because some of the feedback you're going to get, and I've gotten a lot of it, being as that we are assertive women, is that you're just too much. And sometimes, I mean, I've learned how to dial myself back because I've had to in the business world in order to get ahead long term. And when I say get ahead, that's not get promoted, but that's being able to move forward in the relationship, move forward in my own journey of learning how to be the best professional that I can be, and also how to better communicate with different personalities, difficult people. Again, it goes back to you, be open to learning that, maybe you are in the wrong. Maybe there is
yeah.
something for you to learn, and be open to that, so that you can take those next steps to
Yeah.
say, okay, I gotta change how I'm doing. So I would say assume innocence, be curious, be respectful, but be open to some negative feedback coming your way that may have some applicability.
I love that. That's so good. Same question, Mom.
I would say seek to understand before you seek to be understood.
Mm.
Great.
I love that. So I just want to say thank you again to both of you. I think the dynamic of us as a family is really powerful in the way that we talk about this because, for most of my late teens into my 20s, I really struggled and there was conflict in our relationships consistently. And so I'm so grateful that we've been able to learn and grow together to get to the place that we are today where there's still conflict right? Let's just all acknowledge we still have conflict in our families and in our relationships with each other. But what I'm seeing is this progression of growth and mindfulness and mutual respect and transparency and honesty in our conversations, because we do value our relationships and we are working to find clarity and encourage each other and be the best versions of ourselves. So the fact that you're here together doing this with me today, I'm so grateful. So thank you.
You're well, thank you, honey.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording